This is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch, the No Wave Nostradamus, and Tim Dahl. I like to consider him my personal funk and wagnalls. Yeah. Hi, Tim.
Hi. Well, it's kind of, it's embarrassing to admit to the public, but kind of waking up here. It's noon on Thursday, and you'd think with the fallback time change, I'd be getting up earlier, but
look,
I'm getting up later.
You have many nicknames, and one of them, my favorite, is Stalin Dahl.
Well, I don't know if that's a
when you get to be my age, you won't need to sleep as much. Don't worry about it. Well, you might not live that long, but that's okay.
Nice. Oh, boy.
Sorry about that. Well, let's just get straight to the bad news involving that huckster whose whole career has been a hoax, which has now turned into a pox upon humanity. South Dakota, as well as Wyoming, Minnesota, Montana, are now leading the nation in infection rates per capita. Now, let's remember, Donald Dumbo, his super spreader event in July, as well as the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally, which approximately 300,000 maskless maniacs avoiding social distancing. South Dakota has right now 53,486 confirmed cases of COVID.
It's insane.
The idiotic Trumper, Kristi Noem, or as I like to call her, Kristi No Fucking Nothing, still refuses to mandate masks or social distancing. And it just goes to prove, Tim, you know this, because you're human doesn't mean you have a fucking brain.
The whole northern Midwest right now is getting destroyed. And for you non-American listeners, or maybe some Americans who just know nothing about geography, you can't the density level in the Dakotas is like nothing, and it shouldn't be spreading at all. It's like, what is going on? And it's funny you mention this because there was a woman that was in the news, Jody Doring from South Dakota, who's a nurse. She is treating patients literally on their deathbed, giving them steroids, but they're on their deathbed, and she's like, do you want your phone to FaceTime your family and blah, blah, blah? And she's heard this more than once. They're looking her in the eyes going, this shouldn't be happening. It's a hoax. So there's people literally dying, and they still think it's a hoax.
Well, let's not forget what the center of the country is. They're all Trumpers. Now, you tell a lie often enough, and idiots are going to come to believe it. Well, they're going to start to believe the truth when their grannies and mummies are dying.
But that's the thing. People are dying, and they're still to their last breath.
Well,
they think it's not true.
Excuse me, till his last breath, which can't come soon enough for me. The dolt Donald refuses, in spite of how many failed lawsuits. And face it, you got fucking Rudy Giuliani as your main lawyer. He needs to go to Bellevue right away. Trump needs to go to Rikers. Giuliani to Bellevue.
Well, Giuliani's charging $20,000 a day. It's all cons on top of cons on top of cons.
Well, that's actually the point. The temper tantrum throwing, absolute egotist, narcissistic psychopath with no empathy cannot admit loss in the face. Keep having a recount. Every time there's a recount, the vote goes up for Biden. What an idiot.
Well, he fired his top security official, Christoph, what's his name? Krebs. Yeah. He, upon evaluation, he publicly said it was, in fact, the most secure election in American history. And
fired.
Next day, fired.
Immediately. Well, that's it. With Trump, if you tell the truth, you get fired. If you lie, no biggie. You're in for life.
Well, going back to the denial of COVID, there's 130 Secret Service employees are in quarantine right now.
I would have gladly taken him into my apartment if I had enough room. I could nurse Secret Service agents back health or quicker to the casket.
Yeah, I want to. You know what we should do when things calm down? Because Simon's friend Gene used to live near the UN, and that big UN summit they have every September, where every world leader gathers. When it's done, all the secret services from all the different leaders throw some insane ragers, and of course the Russian ones. They have all the best drugs and hoes because they're all hoeing out.
Hey, excuse me. Would you please refer to them with a respectful term of prostitutes? Thank you. There's nothing. Russian prostitutes, some of the best I've ever met.
I told you my aunt was a prostitute, and I was just using that to kind of spice up the conversation.
I don't like
all respect for sex workers, if you want me to be politically correct.
I'd like to do some sex work on you just to show you how much respect and dignity an ex-prostitute could have. Now, let's lighten this up for a minute.
Sure.
I have to say, I don't know much. I don't know anything really about TikTok because, you know me, I'm a Luddite, or I like to say a Lidite.
Yep.
But K-pop kids, gotta respect, they were flooding the million, which was like 1,000 megabilly march that just happened in Washington. And the head of it, whose name is Shay Detmore, called on all his TikToker and Twitter users to start flooding sites with pictures of pancakes. Now, you wonder why pancakes, and their theory was, hey, if Trump thinks he can flip the election and flip states, he should just flip a fucking pancake and get it over with, because it ain't gonna happen.
When you think of gangs, when I'm growing up, you had like Latin kings and all these vice lords, and now it's like K-pop kids, and they kind of didn't they? What was that? A big gathering that Trump did over the summer. Was it in Oklahoma City or
they all
Kane died because he went to it. Where was that gathering? It was in Arkansas or some shit like that.
Tulsa,
but the one that no one came to, and the K-pop gang basically invited them. They basically skewed the numbers about how many people were going to show up. So yeah, K-pop gang turns out to be kind of badass.
All for him. I think K-pop. Hey, promote the pod. We're here.
Yeah, seriously.
You can flip my pancake any day, honey.
All right. Well, going back to COVID, it was announced in Colorado yesterday that there was one of these county jails, 1,200 inmates. I think they got infected, and the whole staff's infected. They didn't give them masks until a couple weeks ago. All these things coming to a head, like just the whole sadistic idea of just incarceration, and then this. So I mean, they didn't give him any masks. So it's just a big giant nuke of COVID.
I didn't catch where she was from, but I saw just when I'm running around this morning, a nurse talking on one of the news channels who said she's been working in the COVID ward since February, has not been tested.
Where?
I didn't catch the location, and she was in tears and just saying, this is just an outrage. They have not been given tests, and she's been working in a COVID ward since February.
Well, all these first responder frontline types, I guess they're going to be getting this first generation, one of two promising, at least they're claiming to be promising, vaccines that are supposed to be up to 94, 95% effective. The Pfizer one was originally 90% when they bumped it up to 94.
You know what the big problem is with that, Tim?
What's that?
You have to store it like minus 70 to 90 degrees.
Yes.
No facilities, very few facilities have the proper equipment to store the vaccines. And
right.
Who's organizing that? I mean, obviously, the only thing Trump has organized, and he had no part in organizing it, but he's assured us of mass graves. Nobody is organizing that. So we have the vaccines. Where are they going to be held?
The other one, though, was it Moderna? That one's you don't need to have so-called. It's 2 shots. The problem is they haven't made many of them. So the Pfizer's they've shipped millions, and the other one, the newer one, they've made less. But we will see. We'll see.
Ship it to the moon. It's awfully chilly up there.
Well, going back to hospitals, right now it's called the Utah Valley Hospital, because Utah's a massive explosion of cases right now. You notice the red states are all red states with this? I just saying.
Well, they got plenty of room for new graveyards.
So this hospital, these nurses and doctors are working so hard to begin with, and now this one hospital, they're being stormed by conspiracy theorists that claim the hospital isn't full of COVID. They think it's just all this lies. And so there's always, they have to have security to not let people go in, because they're like, see, it's not true. And then people are checking in. I have an appointment today. My right arm hurts. And then they're going in there and taking videos. And of course, they're finding the place is packed. They're probably getting it by trying to prove that it doesn't exist.
I heard a good discussion today about what the possibility of QAnon. What if the head, because nobody knows who Q is with all these outlandish sci-fi type conspiracies, was a fat 14-year-old boy in his basement just making this shit up. And the guy that was being interviewed said it wouldn't matter. The people that want to believe, or as I call it, the people with the God hole, they're going to believe. It doesn't matter. Problem is too much time on their fucking hands right now. Get off the internet, you clowns. Go dig some graves.
Didn't Trump in that debate with Hillary in 2016 reference some 400-pounder in the basement? I think they were talking about like Russia or no, I think they were talking about WikiLeaks. And he's like, I don't know, it could be a 400-pounder in their basement, but
he was talking about himself in the bunker. Well, let's go on to something a little bit lighter, like his airheaded Stepford daughter, Ivanka.
Airheaded?
Airheaded. Yeah, well, a hot airbag. It's
that's where I think you're going. Yeah, I'm trying to lead it.
You've led it. But consider her lineage. I mean, the Stepford daughter, her best buddy in high school, who also happened to be her bridesmaid, said that, like we wouldn't really guess, that Ivanka was a bratty, spoiled kunta. But get this. Fart loudly and blame it on other people. Now, I mean, that might be the best thing she's ever done. I don't know. It's just like
she might have learned that from Dad. I mean,
well, better than if Trump farts, they have to air up the entire fucking warehouse because the Big Mac attacker is just eating shit.
Well, they're freaking out supposedly because her and Jared they're not feeling welcomed home to New York because that's where they want to move back, and basically. They think they're going to be harassed
well, you know what? They deserve it because I have to say she is really a lot like that dunce of a dad, Donnie Dumbo, who has the audacity to blame everybody else for his own crimes and ineptitude, refuses to take responsibility. And let's face it, he's right now coming up to one of the most prolific mass murderers in history with almost 300,000 dead people who he murdered through incompetence, ignorance, and ego, and now just sits there. Funny, he's fading from orange to white. Maybe his white hair is going to look better with his orange jumpsuit when he is throwing tantrums and these flimsy. I mean, he's lost his mind. He's got to go.
His tantrums. So he's going nuts. I mean, he almost. His advisors had to advise him not to do a strike on Iran. He basically wants to create just chaos as he passes the baton reluctantly.
Well, he doesn't want to pass the baton at all. And the thing is, the longer he takes to do that, I mean, this is not only undemocratic, it's unheard of because the Biden committee has to get established and they're just start taking care of fucking shit, especially the COVID matter. I mean, he just needs to be led out in a straitjacket, take Rudy Giuliani with him, get those kids into Rikers as well. They can wait for daddy to come home. I'm done with this fucking clown, and I can't wait till we have no more to say about him.
Fine, we'll
follow
move
up
on.
with thank you.
We'll move on.
Any animal tales?
Oh yeah, funny you say that.
Oh, is it?
So Columbia, a huge chunk of Columbia, South Carolina, lost its power the other day because at the Dominion Energy Power Plant,
jellyfish,
a squirrel was scurrying across somewhere in the area, and it happened to jump on top of a mega charged transformer, and basically the squirrel, I think, basically blew up, but also took out maybe a quarter of the city's electricity. And it's just chaos, and they're trying to figure it all out. And just as they're getting together later in that afternoon, a dump truck plowed through some major power lines and took out another major chunk of the city. So Dominion Power had a rough day. I mean,
okay, again, just because you're human doesn't mean you have a brain. Now, wait a second. Let's go back to the squirrel for a minute.
Okay.
I love squirrels. Every squirrel is called Ruffy or Tuffy. That's what their names. I have them everywhere I go. They follow me. I'm going to train. Now I have a mission. Train some terrorist squirrels. I did love this.
Nice.
I did love this cartoon that was called, I think it was 101 Dead Squirrels. And it was just squirrels doing ridiculous things. Like one would go into a doctor's office, hook himself up to a blood bag, wait till the nurse comes in, and explode all over. Oh, one of my favorite animations.
Oh man, squirrels are high energy. I was taking a little after we walk in South Brooklyn and Marine Park, and those things are getting a little getting ready for the winter. They're
Hey!
really plumping up. They were literally going, quote unquote, nuts. Nuts.
Hey, I might have trained a few of those little fellows. Leave Ruffy alone. He might bite you on the ankle.
Well, all right. So going back, I have another animal story. It happened again.
What?
Pods of killer whales are attacking these boats near the Strait of Gibraltar, like near Portugal and Spain. And some guy named Dave Smith, some British captain who took his 45-foot sailboat. I guess he goes from England to the Mediterranean, spends his winters there. And you know, all these people have these theories. They're mad at humans. And now the latest theory, by the way, it's the 40th attack on a boat. 40 fucking times.
Well, sharks, what's happening? You're being outdone by whales.
They're starting to, because it was videotaped, and now they're saying it's a gang of teenage boy killer whales. It's not full-grown adults, you know, just like a drove of teenage boys just fucking with shit, and they're just ramming into the keel. They're getting nervous, so they call the Portuguese Coast Guard, and they're like, yes, it keeps on happening. They're like, turn off the engine, lower the sail, and just act uninteresting. And sure enough, after 2 hours, the things got bored and swam off. But they were terrified. They thought they were going to take this thing down.
Tim, you know, fuck Tiger King. I see a new reality show for you, The Whale Whisperer.
Well, killer whales. I mean, a full grown bull killer whale, they get up to 12,000 pounds. I mean, that thing can fuck shit up. All right. So
I mean, but let me just add, but like the girls that were swamped up in the whale's mouth in their kayak and just spat out. I mean, wouldn't you just like to sit in Moby Dick's mouth for a minute?
Well, you know, that was a humpback who has baleen. You're going to be fine unless it just takes you down with it.
Woo.
A killer whale.
As long as they don't shit you out the other end, that would hurt.
Now, I don't know if there's any recorded attacks of killer whales on humans. I don't think there really is. But a killer whale, I mean, killer whales have been taking out great white sharks for the last year or so in South Africa. And basically just letting the whole corpse sink to the bottom. They go right for the liver, and they just like rip it right out. They just have their liver lunch, and they let it sink to the bottom. But they know exactly what they're doing. They're clever, and they're rough and vicious hunters. And,
Tim, it reminds me of that song, which I often sing to you. Timothy, where on earth did you go? And it's about guys being lost in a mine, and they can't find their friend Timothy because they ate him. And I have to say, if I was that hungry and it was you or me, I'd go for your liver, buddy.
Oh, boy. Well,
because first of all, it's soaked in alcohol. It's going to be tasty.
Strong. It's definitely strong. I mean, I come to that conclusion. And every time I go to I get my annual checkup, they're like, hey, your liver numbers are great. And I'm like, oh boy, you shouldn't be telling me that.
Tim, if you're gonna eat me, you know where to start. I'm just saying.
Oh boy. All right. Well, New York in the last 36 hours, did you see this road rage case in Flushing, Queens, where the guy basically, they get into some parking spat, and then there's a scuffle, and there's a headlock, and then they're like basically in Brooklyn, Chinatown, and these guys, this kind of gang of Chinese guys, come out with like clubs and bats and start wailing on this Jersey boy. And then he gets freaked out, tries to drive off, and they start fucking up his brand new Audi, which made him really mad because, he's probably paying a lot of money for that thing. Then he basically tries to run over one of the guys. He flips over the top of the hood and then goes right through one of these new Chinese bubble tea kind of things that's all glass and goes all the way through. The whole thing shatters. It's on the internet. You got to check that out. So that was going down. It's pretty insane. What about this dude with a flamethrower? That was a good one. He was on some food truck with a flamethrower, and then he jumps on a MTA bus that's going by and starts shooting it out. And
but wasn't that just for fun or a video?
I think it was,
well, no fun after that.
D-level rapper that was trying to do a publicity stunt without permission.
I want to talk about road rage for 1 minute. Now, I don't drive, so I don't have road rage. I used to have walking rage, but what I don't get is this: smart people. We know that most other people are morons. So if you waste your energy getting mad at them, like, okay, I might be mad at the entire fucking world and almost everybody in it, but I really get mad at one idiot. I'm just like, la di da di da. Yes, you might die an
Right.
early death, and fuck you. I just don't, road rage. I'm always fascinated by people that have rage. I'm extremely controlled, but I just think once you realize how dumb and inconsiderate and impolite most people are, why are you wasting your fucking energy unless you're getting a kick out of
I
the
think it's
adrenal
for
rush?
me. It's like
That's all
cleaning
I'm
the
saying.
pipes.
Now,
It's just you're
oh,
building
I've
up all this
seen you.
stuff from all
Oh,
the whole world, and basically some idiot cuts you off, and you're just like, I hate you with all my might.
yeah. Well, you know
and
what,
I
Tim?
really want you to die.
I, I've seen you go from 0 to 200, but you know what? Blow a little bit more steam out of the head of your. Well, I'm just saying, contemplate that for a minute. Our guest today is Miron Zownir, a incredible photographer who's finally having a renaissance. That started photographing in the late 70s in New York along the West Side Highway piers, all kinds of, I'll say, unwanted people, people that are on the street, people that are just other, and morgues, street people. Beautiful black and white photography has not stopped and is finally getting his,
And I like the
just
description
rewards.
of him as Diane Arbus meets Ouija. I think it's a nice description.
Absolutely beautiful. Yeah, perfect. And that's our guest today. This is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Dahl. This is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch, Tim Dahl, and our special guest, Miron Zownir. Been called by Terry Southern, and this is a pretty high compliment considering Terry Southern wrote the screenplay for Dr. Strangelove, Casino Royale, The Love Barbarella, etc. He called you, my friend, the poet of radical photography.
That's true, yeah.
Let's discuss.
You want me to confirm it?
It's been confirmed for about 30 years, and anybody that doesn't know your work, we're hoping to expose you, as you have exposed others, to the information that you provide us with. Your subject matter, well, first of all, the black and white, which I'm a huge fan of both in film, literature. My literature is black and white. And by the way, you also write, you do films, and you've been doing photography since the late 70s, and your photography is an immaculate, deep, mysterious, sexy black and white. I say sexy, but the subject matters veer more toward degenerates, loners, loneliness, death, decay, destruction, cities collapsing, beautiful things photographed beautifully.
Well, you said it all.
Well, you did ask me to write an intro for your RIP NYC. I was very flattered for that. And I found it highly appropriate because to me, New York died a long time ago.
I guess I haven't really been back to New York since 2003. So the last time in 2016, I was in Los Angeles, but of course I lived there for 9 years, and from whatever I have seen, heard, or whatever I know from the distance, yes, of course, I guess it's yuppie town, it's unaffordable. I mean, after Paris and London, maybe these are the three most gentrified cities in the world. And of course, I know New York City at the time, you know it, and it was the most incredible city in the world.
What years were you here? When did you come to New York?
Okay, from 1980 to 89, and then I moved to LA.
Yeah, I had already left New York in 1980 for 2 years, and I came back in 84, and then I left for good in 90. But what's interesting to me is we've had a similar path of living: New York, Los Angeles, and Pittsburgh.
Well, I liked it because it was the most normal American city I've ever been, and it was very down to earth. People were very open and actually much more open-minded than in Los Angeles.
I would do little experiments in Pittsburgh, and one reason well, first of all, I was on tour, took a survey, Pittsburgh won. But when you say it's down to earth, I would do experiments like walking in front of construction workers in a short dress. They wouldn't even look up. I'm like, I like this place. After all the catcalls and harassment of New York, where did you live in Pittsburgh, and what was your subjects while you were photographing there?
Well, I didn't make any photos in Pittsburgh. I focused on filming because it was after Los Angeles. And for me, I was married. We got an incredibly cheap house. It was almost a villa in a park. You know why? Because Pittsburgh was reduced from 1 million people population to 300,000, so it was available. But for me, it was a temporary stop. But for my ex-wife, it was a permanent stop. So we didn't last, and I went after that. I went back to Berlin, but 5 years was a couple of years too long for Pittsburgh. But I was writing a lot. And I also did focus on, I think I did there 4 short films.
Where did you live in Pittsburgh?
Where I live?
I live near Observatory Hill.
Where the fuck did I live? What is the
Squirrel Hill?
No, not Squirrel Hill. No,
but you live
on the other side, near the Corliss Tunnel.
But the thing is, Pittsburgh is beautiful.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it has 3 rivers. It has. I made some really good friends. Most of them, unfortunately, are dead by now. But it was, let's say, after New York City and Los Angeles, it was a place I thought I could calm down and recover. But since I didn't make much money, I ventured to Alaska for fishing, which was the thickest fucking bullshit job I've ever had. I mean,
and dangerous. It's a very dangerous job.
Well, it was dangerous, but also for 3 months, every day I was vomiting. The meditations they gave you every 2 or 3 weeks were supposedly too expensive. And everybody was quitting, but I couldn't afford quitting. So I was staying, but I was vomiting every day, at least 5 times. And for 9 months after that experience, my voice was still fucked up. I only
burned from the vomit.
Yeah, burned from the vomit. It was an incredible experience, which looking back to all those fucked up experience, I mean, it's enriching. But at the time, at the time, you think you just want to crawl up in a corner and sleep. But that's something they never allowed you, you know. So you had to work permanently, even if you didn't fish anything. And the point was, after 3 months, I was owing them still money for the outfit.
Oh my God!
Supposedly saves you for maybe half a minute in the water.
Why were you vomiting from seasickness?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
brutal conditions.
I never got used to it. Ever.
One of my favorite television shows is about crab fishing, The Deadliest Catch. I loved that show because it was mostly filmed at night. Men were all fucked up. They were often on drugs, and many died. I just loved The Deadliest Catch.
Well, these are the kind of people I met in Seattle. So I went there, even was sleeping for 2 weeks on a park bench until I got even this job. And I didn't realize it was the first time it ever went up there, and it broke down constantly. So, and all the fishing areas were exploited. Yeah. So it was a completely an odyssey, absurd. And once you really had fish and you had to cut off the fish and take out its intestines, it's the most disgusting smell you could imagine.
Oh, yes.
I think it's a disgraceful fucking job. Sorry.
But you seem to have had a lot of job. I mean, look, you've had to have a lot of jobs just to support yourself while doing your art. Doorman, right. Barman, bouncer, demolition worker, bodyguard, furniture mover.
Well, this is a consequence from my work because you know what I did. So I got censored. I got too much because if I would have focused only on sex, okay, I have my lobby. I would have focused only on uh, gays. I would have had my lobby, but I made photos of dead people, of dying people, of starving people, of people fucking, of people exposing themselves. So of course I was very controversial. And this combination people didn't grab because they always try to put you into a corner. And this is life, life and death. And I did never censored myself. And of course I paid for the consequences. Now all of a sudden I'm exhibiting all over the place. All of a sudden the fucking museums who ignored me for 40 years think I'm the fucking greatest, but this doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I don't even regret all those jobs I did because it, as you know, from literature, I mean, what it's nothing which helps you more than real experience and being fucked up and sleeping on park bench and don't know how you get through the next day. And but I always I met people in Seattle and everywhere where I've been, which on the street, like an Indian in Seattle, he knew everything. He knew, well, you go this place, you can eat. You go to this place, you get new clothes. You go to this place, you get whatever.
So I have a question. So I mean, both of you, I know with Lydia, kind of nomadic, exploring all these places, and of course, you both recognize the collapse of certain cities in terms of its transgression and its how it's not very accessible anymore based on the cost of these things. Yet, obviously, Lydia, you're back in New York, and of course, people are still saying that about Berlin, even though it's considerably more affordable than New York. But every time I go to Berlin, people say, "Oh, it's not what it was." In other words, you hear this from all the or most of the desirable cities now. That same complaint. Do you see yourself in Berlin for a while, and do you disagree with that point about Berlin?
Yeah, well, you know, you mystify fucked up, gray, dirty, dangerous, but in a way, of course, open and affordable. But all those things really got with the gentrification, it completely changed. But the Berlin subculture, all the techno clubs, all the sex clubs, everything was booming in a way and went as far as it didn't even go in the 80s. But I'm telling you, when I was in 78, I hitchhiked from Berlin to London, got within 2 days a flat, and lived there for almost a year. In the beginning, I did temp jobs, and after a while, I met a squatter, and she told me, "Look, that's ridiculous. Just go to the social security place, and they give you as much as you earn working hard." So imagine a 20-year-old person would hitchhike today to New York City or to London,
Not possible.
trying to get an apartment, trying to get a job, or surviving on a paycheck you can pick up every 2 weeks. I mean, that's gone, and this is so fucking unfortunate. And whatever they create or build up in subcultural values, this doesn't reach up to that freedom we used to have.
Not at all.
In the 70s and 80s.
And it's funny because I always say this when people talk about, they fight about this wall that Trump wants to build. The wall already exists. The wall, it's financial.
Of course. I mean, we are. I mean, of course, we artists still have our exposure, but it's getting worse and worse for people who are not known or didn't make it yet, because all the galleries disappear, all the affordable places will be renovated and pushed up high. So we communicate and we still have our exposure, but many new artists don't have the chances anymore we had in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and maybe even in the 90s.
Well,
So
exactly. And as you have done, I mean, I've lived in many cities, and half the time it was for the economy of it. Moving to Pittsburgh, moving to New Orleans, living
Right.
in New York when I did in '76, first apartment, $75. But I mean, I'm only back in New York because I still consider myself a nomad. I came back to New York to work with Tim Dahl, Weasel Walter, my band Retrovirus, and because I felt that I just needed to come back to America, a place I loathe and love. After living in Barcelona for 8 years, I really didn't want to live anywhere, but I came back here to work with certain people, and because I have to be, as an apocalyptician, the voice of its descent into madness.
honestly, I know what's fucked up now in the United States, it's insane, but I still miss somehow the United States.
You miss the psychosis.
It's crazy.
Well, I miss a dimension. I don't know why.
How did you use a darkroom? Did you actually make your own prints? Because in some ways for the kids with the digital stuff, it's more affordable. And how did you actually produce this stuff traveling around, and how did you have access to a darkroom? How did you do it?
Well, there's many questions
Yeah.
at once. One is I always worked analog until now.
Okay.
I never have been in a photo school, but every girlfriend, and even my ex-wife and my girlfriend now knew for some reason how to develop. So I've always,
You're good. You're good.
I always went with them, of course, into the darkroom and knew how I wanted it. But I mean, basically, the physical work always my partners did. But now, let's say, since about 6-7 years, since I'm able to work and live from my work, which is unbelievable, because of Benetash, my gallerist. Someone else is developing, a lab is developing my photos.
I think if you can find the right person or the right lab, there's no problem with that. Because first of all, we've ingested enough chemicals without being in a dark room.
That's for sure. And I always hated that part of the darkroom anyway. That smell, but of course I didn't send my girlfriends into the darkroom and stayed outside. I mean, that would have been fucking unbelievable.
Are they still alive? But you knew what you wanted.
One is that the first one isn't alive anymore, unfortunately, and she was studying photography, and I was got rejected into film schools, so I started to borrow her camera. And she did all, the still life and the architectural and the portrait. And I went out and I did the homeless, the bums, the punks. So I with her borrowed camera. So I started out as a compensation. But of course, after a while, I realized that one moment in time, photography is the strongest medium of all.
So which cameras were you using? Just any ones you could get your hands on?
Good cameras.
Hasselblads?
Nikon Mad, and later Contax with light objective. I always had good cameras because I always was advised by my ladies, which really knew about all the technical aspects of photography, which I don't know. I'm completely impulsive, intuitive, and I have a look, and I know exactly what I want, but I don't experiment much with technique. I react to shadows and light, and my photography is extremely subjective.
I want to go back to what you said because it's very important, and this is what I love about photography, and it's the reason I started doing photography in 1990, maybe when I moved to New Orleans, is it does capture a moment, a second.
Absolutely. That's it.
And I read a quote that someone described you, and I kind of thought it was spot on, and maybe you didn't like it, this kind of Diane Arbus meets Ouija. And when I was looking at your work, Diane Arbus, for me at least, was always like capturing the faces that are overlooked, that people walk by, but then also a sense of humor, which I took a little bit of sense of humor in some of your stuff. And then for me, Ouija's kind of the practical and pragmatic side of society about the aftermath of disasters and just humanity, just like having to manage these disasters. And yes, you're your own thing, but I don't know. I don't know if they have any influence on you at all, but I kind of see this hybrid that someone claims to have seen before, you know.
I mean, of course, if I'm compared to those two, I mean, this is, of course, a compliment. And I, of course, like both photographers, and I have my own, definitely my own style. If you don't talk about my Moscow photos, if you talk about New York, Berlin, or anywhere I have been, I think my photos are sometimes hilarious. That black guy on the piers showing his ass like he's the most beautiful guy in the city. I think photos like that. I think my photos are pretty funny and funky.
I agree. I agree.
Well, ask Lydia. I guess you agree too, right?
Well, let me say this. I think my spoken word is hilarious, but not many other people are laughing. I don't get it.
Well, and it's funny because you were saying earlier that it took 40 years for society to filter your work because they couldn't handle this collision of the violence and the underbelly mixed with all these other things. And ultimately, it's the same job as stand-up comedians. If the brutality of this planet, if you can't use humor as a filter to help us get through it, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And yet people can't handle both in the same room.
But excuse me, where we also come together again, my friend, we don't do stand-up comedy, even though we think we're funny. We both do stand-up tragedy. even when some of your subjects are falling down.
And also, there is a prejudice towards poverty and visual or obvious misery. This doesn't mean those people don't have sometimes a funkier or crazier or more interesting life, or whenever then the social surrounding would suggest. So I think sometimes many people I made photos of which really very hilarious poses came really from the most incredible poverty. Like many of those transgenders in the 80s at the fuck piers, they have been many Puerto Ricans or blacks which were in their family outsiders and were rejected, and coming to this area where even the gays sometimes didn't allow them to come into the more hidden areas where they had intercourse. They were complete outsiders, but they were the most up kids, open, friendly, in such a good mood, which was unbelievable. So they really enjoyed that time, and it showed how much empathy and how much life they had in themselves. Even they lived in a really miserable surrounding, and but these escapes they could at least appreciate.
Is there a hunger for novel places for you?
Definitely. I mean, I've just made a documentary about Romas in Romania, and they have been in the worst polluted places I've ever been. And I have been in Roma places in Bulgaria, in Ukraine, in Russia. So this was really topped everything. So, and I planned going to Mexico. I mean, I'm always open, and I did a lot. Now my photo book Romania Raw is coming out. I've been in Istanbul, which was a fantastic city, which was unbelievable. I couldn't believe it. I had one contact, and I thought I'm a complete nobody, but the whole subculture created one event after another because everybody in the subculture knew me. So I was completely flashed going there, and it is of course a very polarized city.
Oh wow!
It was at a time when nobody from the West went there because they were so afraid. I didn't get no problem with anyone, not with the not with the burqa people, not with the liberal, not with the nationalists, with nobody.
I want to talk a little bit about your literature. And I think we were published by by the same German publisher, by Max and Moritz, one of your books.
Right, right,
They
yes,
pub-
yeah. I read your book, by the way. I really liked it. Well, this from this, of course, I got the idea that you could
ah,
do intro
you're,
to my
you're
book.
talking about Paradoxia,
Right,
a
right.
predator's diary. Yes, I thought you could relate. I'm glad you read it.
Paradoxy, definitely.
Yes, I mean, it's kind of a companion to some of your unshot pictures.
So you are from upstate New York, right?
Yes,
Originally. And how long did you live in Pittsburgh?
4 years.
What years?
From I mean, sometime in the mid 90s. I'm not sure because I lived in New York. I went to New Orleans. I went to Los Angeles. I went to San Francisco. From San
That's
Francisco, Pittsburgh.
unbelievable. We lived at the same time in Pittsburgh.
People,
How the fuck did we never meet?
well,
Good
because in
question.
Pittsburgh I was mostly writing Paradoxia, and I was doing photography, and I wasn't doing performances, but I did do one or two art shows of my sculptures. But also there was a rumor, I love this, that when I moved to Pittsburgh, I had red hair at the time, and I met a woman that, she was a cop with red hair. So some people thought I had moved to Pittsburgh to become a cop. We don't need to go into it. So yeah, I look really good in a uniform.
I also know. I've also had some experiences with you in Pittsburgh. Last
What
time,
happened there?
well, me and you were. I was accompanying your spoken word, and you had a heckler, and you paused for a second. You let him go, and then he got a wine glass whipped into his face, and it exploded, and the whole place. All the kids they didn't know what to do, and then once that happened, it was like Lord of the Flies, and everyone started dumping beers on the guy's head, and a bouncer dragged him out, kicking and screaming. Then he said he was going to call the cops, and then he realized he was humiliated at that point. And in the shadows, he's like fake calling the cops, like, yeah, some woman harassed me and just attacked me. And then when he realized the eyes were off him, he kind of ran
And he
home.
had no idea about my relationship with the police because I can reduce them to tears or make them even show me their rear in a matter of seconds. But that's just my private joy on tour. So
Have you ever been arrested?
I've
Have you ever been
I've
arrested?
arrested police.
I have been arrested at least 6 times.
I'm too clever for that, my friend. Has your
Oh, wow. Oh, thank you.
You have no idea. Just let me know if you get in trouble next time. I mean, and it doesn't matter even if they don't speak English. I've dealt with Russian police, French police,
Yeah, me too.
Italian, Spanish. It doesn't matter. They see the look in my eye of pure innocence, and they're that dumb.
Wow,
They're
wow. I couldn't believably do this transformation. But because I always was so pissed, it was clear.
Well, you see, since I have no guilt and never have, they realize I must be innocent. Idiots.
Oh, okay.
Has your literature ever been translated into English?
Well, only one short story, which is a part of a Berlin noir series, which is in a
Akashic.
Brooklyn publishing house.
They publish my books in two of my books in America, and
Oh, wow.
I was in Istanbul noir.
Wow.
We're speaking about Istanbul.
And one of my books will be translated into Turkish, and another book into Italian, and one book is translated into Bulgarian. So these are the 3 languages. So, which is amazing because my books maybe sold 500 times, which is a joke.
500
But because
copies,
of my
yeah.
photography,
Yeah.
people approach me because they read, well, he's writing, and then they. So, photography is such an international language, and you have the advantage of writing in English.
Oh,
But
excuse
if you
me.
write it-
I have the advantage of writing in English, which means even all of my translations, I have no idea. I'm having a big issue right now with a French translation of one of my anthologies because they just can't get it right. I've been published in Czech and Russian and Turkish, Paradoxia and Turkish. I could still be in a Turkish prison right now if anybody would have read it.
Yeah, me too, after they publish my book.
We're safe.
So-
We're safe so far.
so far. Yeah, you're safer than me. You're further away.
So what's your next trip? What's your next destination? You said Mexico. Do you have?
Maybe Mexico, but right now I actually documented Berlin under Corona.
Okay.
So in the beginning, the absolutely desolated, empty space, except of the homeless and bums, which felt never had so much space, but never have been so isolated, because nobody was really during the restriction time. Nobody was really around, and they were rolling around, dancing, fighting, starving, like nobody else is around. And after 2 or 3 weeks, all the demonstrations started. Esoterics, right wing, left wing, conspiracy people, all people questioning Corona, and I have been on every demonstration. And I think it was it. I've never made so many photos of people getting arrested, like in this period.
So important. This book is going to be so important. And during quarantine, right, it's not really completely ended, but you have a few gallery shows up now.
Well, yeah, because everything was postponed from spring to autumn. So right now, EMOP, which is European Month of Photography, I have 3 exhibitions and 1 artist in action presentation. And in November, I have 1 man show in Cluj-Napoca, Romania, an art museum, and International Center of Photography in Palermo. And this is the most interesting place because the museum's director of this International Center of Photography is Letizia Battaglia, and she used to go in the 70s. She was a left rider, went to all the mafia killings, made photos of the mafia victims, and also made photos of the mafia bosses, and got even her teeth beaten out.
Oh,
So,
I would
I mean,
imagine
what an
so.
incredible, courageous woman. She's 82 years old, and she wanted me to have a one-man show in Palermo, in one of the biggest photo places in Europe.
So fantastic.
So I'm very honored.
So fantastic.
I'm very honored to meet, and I'm really looking forward to meet her. So in this way, I really cannot complain. And I also just finished a novel during Corona, that whole isolation time. So I made photos and I did a novel. The thing is, I got 4 novels published, but I have 5 more novels nobody except of my girlfriend ever read. So I even didn't show it to anyone. So I finished 1 book after another because I think, who the fuck is gonna print that one?
You never know. Have you ever been to the Cathedral of Mummies in Palermo?
I've never been in Palermo.
So Palermo, Galway, Guanajuato, Mexico. There are 3 places that have, outside of Egypt, natural mummification from lime in the soil. And there is a church in Palermo, which I went
That's
to.
fantastic.
And you're not supposed to take photos. And this is when I had, an analog camera. And I would there was a priest in a long robe and the big hat. And every time I wanted to take a picture of the mummies, which babies, hugging mummies, soldier mummies, I would just cough and click. I have some photos of the mummy.
There also used to be a ghost town in the middle of Palermo.
Wow.
I played a concert there once, and it was a whole postal section, a town within a town that was run by the mafia. Then when the mob boss was arrested, basically all the vultures came out taking all the copper wire, and they took it away, and they just gutted the whole thing. I mean, there was a makeshift church there. I mean, it was a town within a town run by the mafia. Then the junkies came in, and then basically they were kicked out, and then the artists took it over. But it was like a whole ghost town, pitch black, churches and all that stuff, just in the middle of the city.
Too bad it's gone.
Yeah, it might still be there.
I'm gonna definitely ask for it too.
We have contacts in disparate places: Mexico City, Brazil, Argentina. However, to quote Mike Davis, one of my favorite writers, this is a planet of slums. And outside of Europe, and even inside of Europe, and especially inside of America, but a lot of the rest of the world, other than Japan and Australia, which even has a minor amount, is littered with slums and is still littered with the dregs, not the dregs of humanity, but made to feel like they're the dregs because of the economic inequality, because of the greed, because of the corporate kleptocracy, because of war still. Mainly the planet is mostly slums and being made more so every passing day.
Yes, but I wouldn't exclude Japan. Definitely not Tokyo.
Yeah, well, I mean, they've had so many natural disasters recently too that there we go.
Do you explore some of the more depressed parts of East Germany with your photography? Some of the forgotten
I almost
cities.
exclusively stayed in the West, which was in a way as gloomy and as dark, but it had more cultural opening. And
Okay.
but it was a polarized time too in the 70s between anarchists, police, establishment, left, right. East Germany, for me, what I was doing, I couldn't have. I would have been an outsider, and I knew West Germany. I in West Berlin, and I lived in West Berlin, what you would have called at the time the worst area. The most
Kreuzberg or
depressed,
Yeah.
Kreuzberg,
Yeah.
36, which at the time, and you always saw the wall, but it was a world in itself, and it was. I would have always been a visitor to East Germany, and I might have been even under
surveillance. Yeah.
observation. So
Yeah.
I had much more playground in West Berlin.
I don't know who did it or when they did it, but somebody had painted in giant letters "Teenage Jesus and the Jerks" on the Berlin Wall.
I made a photo of that.
Ah, you see?
I have a photo. Did you ever see my book Berlin Noir?
I did not. It's in
I
there?
have to say, well, it is in the book. You see the wall, Teenage Jesus and the Jerks.
Makes sense.
Which must have been, when was it? 76, 77, 78?
I don't know, but the first time that Teenage Jesus played in Berlin, maybe the only time, Alex Hacker, again of Neubauten, was 14 years old in the audience. Yeah.
Did you play with James?
No, he was already out of the band by that time.
Oh, he was already. Oh, okay.
It didn't last long. Look, he was fire, I was ice. He had to do his own thing. That's the way it had to be.
Yeah. I met him several times, and I even drove him sometimes to Washington D.C. where he had his gigs. I saw him in the East Village where he was playing in front of 10 people. I saw him in a crowded place. I saw him in his hotel room with 30 or 40 teddy bears.
You're talking about James Chance. Well,
James Chance.
I saw him learn how to brush his teeth.
But he was a dresser.
He looked good back in the day.
He looked good, and I always thought he was a great player.
Well,
I liked his energy.
Yeah, he was great. Not everybody holds up as well as we have.
Well, yeah.
Sorry, but I'm not. What music were you influenced by, and writers? That's what I like to know. We know your photographic influences, but because you did a lot of photos of punk in Berlin in the late 70s, but writers and music, what were your influences?
Well, I grew up with my grandparents, and they had a radio with one station, which was called Volksempfänger. So it's Sundays, and in the evenings I always played classical music. So I basically grew up with Beethoven, Mozart, Brahms. But as a teenager, beat, Rolling Stones, blues, then jazz, then punk, then new wave, hip hop, and then I stopped.
What do you listen to now? Do you ever because I rarely listen to music. What do you listen to now?
Well, when I'm writing or when I have to relax, definitely classical music. And my favorite is Beethoven. The first great book I read when I was 13 was The Stranger by Camus. Then I read everything by Dostoevsky. I was Crime and Punishment was one of the most incredible experiences I ever had. But I read everything. The French existentialists, the Americans. I read Burroughs, The Beat. I mean, I read all the Russians. Samuel Beckett is fantastic. UNESCO. I don't think you can tell me Celine. You can tell me one name I wouldn't have read. Look, when I went to United States in '80, I had 2 suitcases. And of course, in Pittsburgh, I had more than 1,000 books. When I left for Berlin in '95, I left with 2 suitcases. After 15 years United States, so I left everything. I left my house because I left my ex, so I left everything.
I've done that. Well, usually I sell everything. I'm a little bit more practical than you. I have moved and sold everything many times. Yeah, because it's only stuff.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, but some things you don't want to.
Well, and books are heavy.
Yeah, that's yeah, but some I couldn't afford. I mean, all the photo books I mean, for example.
Oh, boy.
But literature was my first passion. Definitely.
Mine too, because
it was absolutely. Yeah. And then it was, I think, then it was film probably. It was okay when I was 6, 7, 8. There was German TV, black and white. Everything was film, and they had an educational program and a cultural program, which was for a kid growing up. I think pretty cool. Because if you have only one station, and later 2 stations, I wasn't even a kid anymore when they had 2 stations. So you focus on things, not like it is now.
Your films are in black and white too, aren't they? Most. Yeah.
But one documentary about Bruno S. You know, Bruno S. He was a major character in 2 Herzog films like Kaspar Hauser and Strosek. He was for 30 years in a mental institution, always also during the Nazis. But with Herzog, he won Cannes Film Festival. But after those 2 films, he was just a street musician, living from
busking.
Yeah, from whatever. So I did a documentary about him, and I did this one. I did color, but others and another full feature film with Bruno. I didn't color, but I would say 80% of my films, almost all my short.
It's still, and as you've said, it's
black and white. Black and white.
I've shot a lot of photography in black and white. I prefer films in black and white. I just think there is a mystery and a depth that color does not bring, and it's also a timelessness. It's another world. It's
more mysterious. It's more mysterious. It raises more questions.
It's more beautiful.
As explicit. It's more for your imagination.
Did you see the film, which was in black and white? I haven't seen it, but I would like to. The Lighthouse with Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson.
No. But it's maybe 2 or 3 years old, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's interesting
I have seen the advertisement, but I haven't seen it yet either. I haven't been that much in the cinema either. I mean, I knew from the 20s to the 70s, I know every film.
Well, nobody.
and then some in the 80s and some in the 90s. But
no reason.
Then I lost a little bit the track.
No reason to go to the cinema. Everything is on your computer screen now.
No, but I find it very, very unfortunate. I prefer the cinema.
Okay,
I prefer the time when you could, even in Germany, in the 60s and 70s, they had in the train stations, they had cinemas for people who had to wait for the train. So you could see Italo westerns or sometimes trashy, sexy, but sometimes really good films. So I mean and everybody was in the train stations, the gays, the transgenders, the criminals, the muggers. So it always created an atmosphere around it.
Did you ever get swept up into any of the drug scenes or alcohol scenes? Because you were passing through a lot of places when they were in a hardcore problems with this.
Well, of course, but I mean, I did drugs myself.
A dabbler? You just dabbled?
I did a lot of drugs, but the only time I would say I lost control was this one fucking year in Los Angeles, because I was supposed to do a full feature movie, but my producer at the time, Jose Funahara, maybe you know him. He was Plasmatics in the first band. He was all of a sudden. He said, well, we're going to do your film, but I'm going to do it bigger because I'm going to do first another film in the Philippines, and maybe you could help me with the script. And I looked at the script and said, look, Jose, leave your fingers from it. This is bullshit. But he did it anyway, and it was more or less a flop, and he couldn't do my film anymore, which I was already on the payroll from Tokyo. I was in Los Angeles. I didn't make one fucking photo, and I was doing.
What were you doing?
Amphetamines.
You know.
Yeah.
So,
crystal meth. Crystal meth.
I've seen so many fucking tweakers with holes in their faces, but I didn't make it. It's the only time really where I didn't make one photo. Shots. I didn't shoot one photo.
So West Coast crystal meth or German speed? Which one do you prefer?
I mean, come on. I'm German fucking.
No, which one do you prefer? Which one do you prefer?
Like rat poison.
Look, excuse me, when you've lived as long as we have, sometimes you need to take a year off to just go insane, or to just. We're allowed. We're allowed.
What year was that? What year was that in LA where you kind of bottomed
89.
out? 89. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. But you got it together, which is because a lot of meth heads don't.
I mean, after all, I have a lot of discipline. I'm physically absolutely fit, and I kept my. I mean, it's not the only drug period I had. I mean, I did every drug there is. The only drug I never liked. Was heroin.
You're so much like me, exactly.
I sniffed it twice. I had to throw up, and I thought, this stupid fucking bullshit drug.
I had the same experience.
Every other, and I could handle. Look, I mean, I was working in nightclubs and as bouncer.
Right.
Well, you don't need heroin. Then you need cocaine.
Oh, come on, of course.
Come on, baby.
Were you ever scared on a psychedelic where you're kind of like, you know what, I'm a little scared here?
You know what, I did. My first psychedelic, I don't know if I was 13 or 14.
I was 12.
I was completely, I was completely, I didn't even know what the fuck this is. I just smoked for the first time hashish out with newspaper paper. You know, it was almost got a blackout, and all of a sudden my friend, who was his father was black, was a black American soldier. His mother was a German. So he moved when he was 13 or 14 to this soldiers area in Baumholder in Germany.
Okay.
I think it was 67 or 68. So people just started to write about California and acids, and he came with two of his military guys to his grandparents and locked his grandparents out, and we were in the living room, and everybody was swallowing something, and I didn't even know, and I had unbelievable flashbacks. When it was dangerous, but I survived it mentally. And
it's expansive. Psychedelics are expansive. Look, we don't really know each other, but we do. We have a lot of similar experiences in similar places, kind of dealing with similar subject matters. And what I'm finding from you now is you, like me, in spite of the subject matter, we seem, you and I, and also Tim, we're pretty up people. We're not
definitely
at this
because
point.
If you're down, you can't kick constantly ass. You're gonna be in shape, you know, to fight back. But one thing I wanted to say to Lydia, we once in New York City talked at the phone.
Okay.
We once, because John Baker, I don't know if you know him, he was an organizer. He got all the English guys like Billy Idol and all those British bands to New York, and he somehow, for some reason, and I don't know anymore, but we never connected, which unfortunately.
But it seems as if we have.
Two trains in the night.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys.
That's why I was so excited that Chris Campion had also suggested you, because I'm like, oh, yes, please. Because it seems like we have connected on a different plane, just by the subject matter, by our experiences, by the places we've been, by our approach. And here we are now, both still fighting the good fight against normality, complacency, ignorance, and still finding the beautiful shadows and light on the dark side of the things most people would rather not see.
Yeah, and you know what? You didn't know anything about me, but I heard your music. Remember In the Closet?
Of course, some people are still there.
You know, and so I was aware of you, and I don't know, even if I had a couple of exhibitions already very early, and I have been featured in Village Voice and East Village Eye and New York Native and everywhere. You might have been subconsciously, and you've probably seen some of my photos in black and white.
Well, especially one of the most famous ones is that like semi-crucifixion.
Yeah, of
that
course.
one, of
and
course.
I'm sure you saw it.
I've seen
Yeah,
it many
of course.
times. Oh, I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to
Very
talk to you for 1 minute because you went, living in Barcelona as I did. I went and saw the Good Friday.
No, I never lived in
No. As I did, I went and saw the Good Friday processions where they're dressed like the Ku Klux Klan, and you had
Of course.
photographed the Christian flagellators
Right.
in one of your series.
In the Basque country. I have been in Lourdes, and then I went there to the Basque country, and it was a flagellation. I don't know if it's still allowed, but it's unbelievable.
Well,
Me as an atheist, of course, was...
the Good Friday processions were incredible because there's two towns in Spain that have this drum. The whole towns are drum corps. So there's the granny drum corps, the teenage drum corps, the drum corps from this street, and they start drumming at midnight on Good Friday. And they drum up to the cathedral, and they're wearing outfits that look like the Ku Klux Klan.
I know, like Sevilla too.
Exactly.
In Sevilla,
and it's just the processions are still so amazing. One time I was just in Sevilla walking out on a Saturday morning, and I see a procession of oxen pulled carts with virgins in white, 20 carts. And I'm like, this is a few years ago. This isn't 100 years ago. Spain is amazing.
But it's spectacular. This is the strange thing. It has a myth about it. As I told you, I'm an atheist, but I'm fascinated about the culture and the visual image.
Well, and so much great art. And
it's like of an Eisenstein movie, Alexander Nevsky, when those Russians with this totally white Ku Klux Klan style, or Griffiths. I mean, it is...
Birth of a Nation, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, the beauty about Spain is the juxtaposition between their atrocious history of, the Inquisitions and colonization.
Insane.
Yes. And then the way they are, and then the incredible art, the incredible films, the incredible architecture. Goya,
Buñuel, for example.
Goya, who you've been compared to, Capricious is one of my favorite series of paintings. And of course, Gaudi and Buñuel and Dali and all of this. And then now, or when I was there, I would see grandmothers literally cursing at churches, going, fuck you. I haven't seen you in 2,000 years, and I don't see you now. And also protest against the Pope, how far they've come.
This is fascinating, but I'm sure 50% are still, 60% are still pro-Catholic.
Hey, and pro-Franco.
Sure.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And we're going to summarize what I said before. We will continue, all of us here, gathered together around this, to still shine light on the underbelly, to go into the darkness, to find the beauty there within, to focus on the things that other people tend to ignore, whether it's emotions or lifestyles or circumstance or poverty or sexuality. And we will not stop, censored or not, popular or not. And the thing is, you and I, having been at it for decades, Ain't going nowhere, honey. We both still look pretty good. We're spunky. So we might not sleep, but we're spunky. We're just going to do what we always have done, which is to create, because if we didn't, our blood would burn us alive.
Definitely. It was a great statement, and it was fantastic talking to you.
This has
Lydia.
been the Lydian Spin with Tim Dahl and Miron Zownir, and you can go to his website and see all of his great work. Thank you so much, my friend.